The Dravik Armada drifted out of the dark between the stars, a wall of steel and firepower stretching farther than the eye could see. 300 warships, each bristling with weapons, each designed for one purpose, to crush anything in their path. Their hulls glowed faintly with the heat of their engines, the color of molten metal against the cold void. For weeks they had moved in silence. There comes dark, their formation perfect. The fleet's commander, High Admiral Vectress, stood on the bridge of the flagship Bloodfang, gazing at the blue-green marble ahead. Earth, the newest target of the Dravik conquest. He had studied the planet's profile primitive species, no known interstellar fleet, scattered orbital satellites, and a history of constant wars with themselves. Vectress had crushed far greater civilizations. This would be a simple operation. The grand viewscreen, Earth rotated slowly, clouds curling across its oceans. Vectress almost laughed at the idea of such a fragile world trying to resist the might of the Dravik. In his mind, this was more of a cleanup than a war. "Deploy forward reconnaissance squadrons," he ordered, his voice deep and calm. "Sweep their orbital perimeter. Disable any resistance before the main fleet enters low orbit." Around him, his officers worked without hesitation, their clawed hands dancing over control panels. But before the scouts could break away, something appeared on the tactical display, a single contact, small, faint, almost hidden against the black. The sensors tried to identify it but failed. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't debris. It was a ship, a human ship. The bridge went quiet for a heartbeat, then broke into low murmurs. Vectress frowned. One vessel? They dare send one vessel to meet us? Laughter rippled among the junior officers, but the Admiral raised a hand for silence. Put it on screen. The image sharpened. The human craft was dark gray, angular, with no visible insignia. Its hull was scarred as though it had seen battle. Before, there were no visible energy spikes, no weapon systems flaring to life. It simply floated there, nose angled slightly toward the incoming armada, like a lone predator watching a herd approach. "Scan it." Vectress ordered. His sensors chief glanced up a moment later, confused. "It's armed, Admiral, but weapons are unlike anything in our database. Energy output minimal. Shield systems, reading nothing. It's outdated, obsolete." The Admiral's lip curled in amusement. "A relic, then. They think to frighten us with a museum piece." He leaned back, claws drumming on the arm of his command chair. "Perhaps it's a ceremonial escort, or a desperate gesture. Either way, remove it from my sight." The forward destroyers broke formation, closing in on the lone human ship. They activated targeting systems, their red targeting beams painting across the strange vessel's hull. Still, it did not move. Inside, the human warship, the Horizon's Fury, Captain Elias Rourke stood at the center of his bridge, eyes locked on the incoming alien fleet. His crew moved with the quiet efficiency of people who had drilled for years without pause. No one was panicking. No one was speaking unnecessarily. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. "Status?" Rourke asked without turning. His gaze from the view ahead. "All systems green," replied his tactical officer. "Targets acquired." Firing solutions locked across the first 3 waves. The captain's jaw tightened slightly. Shields. Optimal. Weapon charge at 100%. Rourke finally spoke the words his crew had been waiting for. "Weapons. Free." Back on the Bloodfang, the Dravik destroyers opened fire, a storm of plasma bolts streaking across the darkness. The space between the fleets lit up in brief flashes, the afterglow, painting the human ship in ghostly colors. The impacts hit instead of tearing through metal. The blasts shimmered against an invisible field that rippled like water. "Impossible," the sensors chief gasped. "Admiral, that ship has shielding beyond our known physics." Before Vectress could respond, the Horizon's Fury fired. Just one shot. It wasn't a barrage. It wasn't even a beam in the way the Dravik understood energy weapons. It was a pulsar-condensed sphere of light so bright it left after images across the Dravik's visual feeds. It crossed the distance in less than a second and slammed into the lead destroyer. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire destroyer folded in on itself, its hull crumpling like paper before erupting in a white-hot explosion that tore through the two ships beside it. 3 warships gone in a single strike. The Dravik bridge erupted into shouts. Evasive maneuvers. Shields to maximum. Recalculate firing patterns. Vectrus gripped the arms of his chair, eyes narrowing. He demanded, "How is that possible?" On the horizon's fury, Rourke didn't smile, didn't gloat. His crew simply moved to the next targets, firing again, each shot claiming another ship. The alien formation wavered. "They're hesitating," noted Rourke's first officer. "They'll break soon enough," Rourke replied quietly. "Keep pressing." The Dravik had fought countless species, but never had they seen such precision. Such calm destruction from a single vessel. This wasn't a desperate defense. This was an execution. And in that moment, Vectrus realized something that made his scales crawl. The humans had been waiting for them. The first minute of battle had already erased 6 Dravik warships from existence. What unsettled Admiral Vectrus most wasn't the loss of the ship Sid, was how the human vessel did it. No hesitation, no wasted shots. Each strike from the horizons. Fury was final. This wasn't luck. This wasn't brute force. This was something else, something the Dravik Armada had never encountered before. And every second that passed brought them closer to understanding that they weren't the hunters. In this fight, they were prey. Vectrus barked new orders, his voice cutting through the panic on the bridge. "Pull the fleet into secondary formation, surround it, and fire from all vectors. Overload the shields if you must just end that ship." The Dravik. Ships scattered, curling into a deadly sphere around the lone human warship. Hundreds of plasma cannons lit up at once, the void blazing with streaks of blue and orange fire. The onslaught was relentless, the combined energy of the fleet pouring into a single point in space. Vectrus leaned forward in his chair, waiting for the human ship's hull to crack, for its shields to collapse in a satisfying burst of light. But it didn't happen. Instead, the horizon's fury absorbed the punishment. Its shields shimmering in a slow, pulsing rhythm, as if feeding on the enemy's attack. Every impact seemed to vanish into the invisible barrier, the energy disappearing as though swallowed whole. Then the human ship moved. It wasn't a slow turn or a steady drift. It was a burst in acceleration so violent that Dravik targeting systems lost track for a fraction of a second. In the vacuum of space, where massive warships usually lumbered like drifting fortresses, the human vessel darted forward with the speed and precision of a blade being drawn. It cut through the Dravik, formation like a ghost weaving between plasma bolts, its hull reflecting the light of its own kills. One by one, Dravik ships detonated, not from wild barrages, but from surgical, precise strikes to their reactors or magazine cores. The human weapons didn't just destroy, they bypassed armor, ignored shields, and found the exact point where a warship was weakest. On the Dravik flagship, the bridge crew watched the tactical map in horror as entire sections of their formation went dark. "This is impossible," muttered the weapons officer, his voice trembling. "They cannot have this technology. No species. At their level, silence." Vectrus roared. But even as he spoke, the doubt coiled in his own chest. The Dravik Empire had scouted human technology before. By their assessment, Earth was barely capable of reaching beyond its own star system. No interstellar fleet. No capital warships. Just slow, fragile craft relying on chemical thrusters and primitive projectile weapons. That was what the data had said, but the horizon's fury was something entirely different. Vectrus narrowed his eyes. "Get me visuals on their captain?" The screen shifted, and for the first time, the Admiral saw the human commander. He was standing in the center of his bridge, tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that carried the calm of a man who had seen far worse battles. His eyes were cold, focused not the eyes of someone hoping to survive, but of someone certain he would win. "Magnify," Vectrus ordered quietly. The closer view revealed the faintest smirk on the human's lips. Smirk. In the middle of facing a fleet that outnumbered him 300 to 1. "Who is this?" Vectress demanded. His intelligence officer scrambled for answers. "Our files. They name him as Captain Elias Rourke, former commander of Earth's Deep Range Defense Program." "But Admiral," he hesitated, swallowing hard. "Officially, he's been dead for 12 years. The bridge went silent. Vectress stared at the man on the screen, a shadow of realization dawning in his mind. The Dravik had been set up. This wasn't a human fleet responding in desperation. This was a baited hook hand. They had swallowed it whole. Back on the horizon's fury, Rourke was already executing the next phase. His voice was steady, unhurried. "Deploy the net." At his command, compartments along the ship's hull opened, releasing a cloud of small, dart-like drones. They moved in perfect unison, forming thin, invisible lines of energy between them. To the naked eye, they were almost impossible to see. To the Dravik sensors, they barely registered at all, just faint anomalies in the void. The Dravik destroyers continued their pursuit, unaware they were flying into a kill zone. One by one, they crossed the energy lines, and each time, the result was instant. The ship sliced clean in half, its pieces drifting apart before erupting into molten fragments. The net closed tighter, shrinking the space in which the Dravik could. "Maneuver!" "Admiral," the navigation officer shouted. "Our escape routes are collapsing." Vectress slammed his fist into the armrest. "Breakthrough, all power to engines. Ram that vessel if you must." But the horizon's fury was already moving again, sliding between wreckage, striking at crippled warships, and always staying just out of reach. Rourke wasn't here to fight for survival. He was dismantling the Armada with the precision of a surgeon removing diseased tissue. And as the minutes dragged on, the true horror settled in for the Dravik. This human ship was not alone because it didn't need to be. By the time the net retracted, more than half of the Dravik fleet was gone. Wreckage littered the space above Earth, glowing faintly against the black. The survivors tried to regroup, but their formations were shattered, their morale broken. On the Dravik flagship, Vectress finally gave the order he had sworn never to give: sound the retreat. And in that moment, for the first time in the Empire's history, the Dravik Armada turned its back on a battlefield not because they couldn't win, but because they had met something they didn't understand. The alien fleet drifted through the cold darkness of space, silent but restless. Inside their ships, crew members whispered among themselves about the strange, single human vessel they had faced earlier. None of them understood how it had slipped away so easily, or why its movements seemed almost like a predator testing prey. The commanders assured them that their armada was still in full strength. Humans were merely overconfident newcomers to the stars. Yet deep inside, even the most battle-hardened among them felt an unease they could not shake. Captain Vorin, leader of the alien armada, sat in his warship's command throne, staring at the holographic star map. The human vessel's last known trajectory was displayed in red, a faint trail disappearing into empty space. Vorin tapped a claw against the armrest. "They're hiding," he muttered, "but they can't hide forever." Round him, his officers nodded, though their eyes betrayed uncertainty. They had faced many enemies before, some fast, some cunning, but never one that could vanish and reappear like a shadow in the void far away. Aboard the human warship Resolute, Captain Daniel Reeves studied the alien formation with a calm that unsettled even his own crew. The Resolute was alone, no reinforcements, no fleet, just one warship against an enemy armada that could blot out a planet's sky. Yet Reeves didn't see a hopeless fight. He saw an opportunity. Every maneuver, the aliens made every shift in their formation, told him something about their habits, their blind spots, their weaknesses. His crew waited for orders, their hands hovering over controls, knowing that when Reeves finally gave the word, it would be sudden and decisive. The alien armada pressed forward, scanning the void, their long-range sensors reaching deep into the darkness. They picked up faint signals and gentrails, radiation bursts, the kind of debris a ship might leave behind, but they couldn't confirm if any of it was real or just echoes. Frustration grew. Vorin ordered a spread formation, hoping to trap the human vessel between wings of ships. But Reeves had already anticipated this. The Resolute slipped between their sensor cones like a fish through a net, silent and invisible. Hours passed. Space remained cold and endless. The aliens started to believe the human ship had fled entirely. But then, out of nowhere, alarms screamed across 3 alien vessels at the rear of the formation. Something fast was approaching, too small to be a capital ship, too large to be debris. Before they could react, bright lances of energy tore through the dark, striking 2 ships with surgical precision. Shields failed instantly. Hulls split open. Air vented into space, along with the screams of their crews. The 3rd ship turned to retaliate, but its weapons fired into empty void. The attacker was already gone. On the Resolute, Reeves allowed himself a thin smile. It wasn't about destroying the entire fleet in one strike. It was about breaking their rhythm, sowing fear, and forcing them to react instead of advance. The crew could feel it too, the shift in momentum. Now it was the aliens who were being hunted. Voron's rage boiled over, slammed a fist against the console, demanding that all ships regroup and increase scanning power. The more they searched, the less they saw. The human vessel seemed to appear only when it wanted to, striking with such speed and precision that it was impossible to predict. Every moment spent chasing it was another moment their formation grew weaker, another moment their morale frayed. In the deep black between stars, the Resolute prepared for its next move. Reeves knew the aliens would soon grow desperate, and desperate enemies made mistakes. His voice was calm, but edged with steel as he gave the order. "We're going to make them believe they've cornered us. And then we finish this." Crew's hands tightened on their stations. Somewhere out there, the alien fleet thought it still had control. They had no idea they were already standing at the edge of their own destruction. The alien flagship loomed at the center of the Armada, its black hull stretching like a fortress forged from shadows. Dozens of escort ships surrounded it, weaving in tight defensive patterns. From a distance, it looked untouchable, floating city bristling with weapons and shields that could crush a planetary fleet. Captain Voron stood on the flagship's command bridge, staring into the void with unblinking eyes. He had been patient long enough. The human vessel had humiliated his forces. He would see it shattered into drifting wreckage before the day was done. "Expand the perimeter," Voron ordered, his voice low but heavy with authority. "Drive them into our center. We'll cut off every escape route." Its officers obeyed without question, though whispers still passed through the ranks. They had seen what one human warship could do. They had watched it vanish into shadows and reappear only to strike with precision. And though they didn't dare say it aloud, many wondered if this trap would only turn into another slaughter, this time of their own ships. Far away, the Resolute floated in silence, every system running at minimal output. Captain Reeves stood at the center of his bridge, arms folded, studying the shifting alien formation. He could see exactly what they were trying to do. They believed they could cage him, but he had already chosen his battlefield. "They think they're pulling us in," Reeves murmured. "In truth, they're coming to us." The trap began to close. Alien ships moved in a slow, tightening spiral, their sensors sweeping every inch of surrounding space. Inside the flagship, Voron's tactical display lit up with a narrowing gap. Any moment now, the human vessel would appear in their net. But as the readings came in, something strange happened. The alien officers began to pick up faint energy. Spikes. Coming from inside the perimeter, the Resolute burst from the void like a predator striking from darkness. Its engines roared to life, and its forward cannons unleashed blinding streams of energy. In seconds, 2 alien escort ships were torn apart, their debris scattering into the path of others, causing chaos in the formation. Before anyone could react, the human vessel dove toward the flagship itself, cutting through the defensive ring. "Like a blade through silk, lock all weapons on that ship," Voron roared. But the Resolute was already weaving between incoming fire, its shields flaring under the impact, yet holding strong. On Reeves's bridge, the crew worked like a single mind. Every maneuver, every burst of fire was perfectly timed. They weren't just fighting, they were performing. Then came the moment no alien on that field would forget. The Resolute dropped speed, positioning itself just outside the flagship's main gun range. Reeves's voice cut through the tense air. "Open a channel." When the transmission connected, Vorin found himself staring into the eyes of the human. Captain Reeves's expression was calm, almost casual, as if this were just another day at work. "Now, I'm giving you one chance to turn around and leave. Because if you don't," his voice hardened, "you won't have a fleet left to command." The silence on the alien bridge was suffocating. No one had ever spoken to Vorin like this, not in his entire career. Rage burned in his chest. But beneath it was something far more dangerous: doubt, before Vorin could respond. The Resolute moved against, so fast the flagship's gunners could barely track it. It slipped under the flagship's firing arc, unleashed a devastating salvo into one of its shield generators, and vanished into the surrounding chaos. The alien armada erupted into confusion, their perfect formation collapsing as ships scrambled. To cover the flagship's exposed flank, from that moment on, the battle shifted completely. The aliens were no longer hunting. They were defending, bleeding ships one by one, knowing the human vessel was still out there waiting for the next strike. The void was littered with burning wreckage. Once proud alien armada now looked like a broken shield, its pieces scattered across the darkness. Yet the flagship still stood, limping forward with its shields flickering. Around it, the remaining escorts clung desperately to their leader, their formations sloppy and uneven. Captain Reeves watched the tactical display, his eyes narrowing. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer in control of the battle. Inside the alien flagship, Captain Vorin paced the command bridge, his claws scraping against the metal floor. Every sensor reading told him the same truth: his fleet was dying. The humans had dismantled their advantage piece by piece, and now, even the most loyal officers were beginning to wonder if victory was possible. "Accept defeat. We focus everything on that ship," he growled. "If we fall, we take it with us." His words were met with silent nods, but none of them believed it would be so simple. Reeves knew the alien leader would try one last desperate strike. He also knew that it wouldn't matter. "It's time to finish this," Reeves said calmly. His crew straightened, tension running through every face. Then he gave the order they had been waiting for: activate the Aegis protocol. The lights on. The Resolute dimmed as the ship's hidden systems came online. For a moment, the vessel seemed to vanish completely from sensors. Then glowing lines of pale blue energy began to crawl across its hull, forming intricate patterns like ancient symbols of war. The shields surged, their power readings spiking beyond anything the aliens had ever recorded. Weapons bays opened along the sides, revealing heavy cannons that had been hidden until now. The alien fleet's sensors went wild. To them, the human warship's energy signature suddenly doubled, then tripled. It was as if the vessel had transformed into an entirely new class of warship before their eyes. Vorin's crew froze. The reality settling in, they had never been fighting the full power of this enemy. The Resolute moved with sudden, shocking aggression. Its first volley ripped through an entire row of alien ships, their hulls bursting in silent fireballs, and it turned its guns on the flagship's escorts, cutting them down before they could even reposition. The human ship was everywhere, attacking from above, below, and the flanks never staying still long enough to be targeted. Vorin watched helplessly as his fleet crumbled. His flagship shook under the impact of repeated strikes, internal fires tearing through the lower decks. His communications officer shouted over the chaos: "Shields are gone. Hull breach in Sector 5. But there was no time to react before another wave hit. Tearing through critical systems, on the Resolute, Reeves stood perfectly still as the alien flagship's image flickered on his screen. "Target their bridge," he said coldly. The next blast punched through the alien vessel's forward section, silencing its weapons for good. The once mighty flagship began to drift, its engines dying, its lights fading one by one. The last alien ships broke formation and fled into the darkness, leaving their leader to his fate. Reeves didn't chase them. This was never about the survivors, it was about sending a message. The galaxy had just received it loud and clear. As the alien flagship's hull finally cracked apart, scattering into the endless night, a deep, uneasy silence filled the human bridge. They had one. Every officer could feel it in their bones. This was only the beginning. Word of the battle traveled faster than light, for the wreckage of the alien Armada had even cooled. Hundreds of listening posts across the galaxy were already transmitting reports. Details were simple, but terrifying. An entire fleet, gone in minutes. Destroyed by a single human warship. No one wanted to believe it at first. Numbers didn't make sense. The logs seemed impossible. And yet every scrap of data confirmed the truth. In the council chambers of the Zoroth Dominion, leaders stood in silence as the recording played. On the great central screen showed the Resolute tearing through ship after ship, its energy weapons cutting the Armada apart like paper. There was no sound in space, but the silence of the video made it worse. Every flash of destruction looked cold, calculated, and unstoppable. When the footage ended, no one spoke. One counselor finally broke the silence. "If that is only one ship," he said quietly, "how many more do they have?" In the shadowy halls of the Imperial Syndicate, admirals whispered to each other. Behind closed doors, it long considered humans a young, loud, and reckless species, dangerous only in small skirmishes. Now that illusion had been ripped apart. Reports suggested that the Resolute wasn't even the largest class of human warship. If that was true, then the galaxy might be staring down a threat unlike anything in recorded history. Back on Earth, Captain Reeves sat in the briefing room with high command. The victory had been absolute, but Reeves wasn't celebrating. He knew exactly what the battle meant. It wasn't the end of the war. It was the spark that would ignite it. Every major power in the galaxy had just been given a reason to either fear humanity or try to destroy it before it was too late. Intel says 3 fleets have already changed course toward our borders, one officer reported grimly. Reeves didn't flinch. "Then we make sure they understand," he said. "What happened out there wasn't an accident. If they come for us, they'll see what the rest of our fleet can do." In the dark reaches of space, the alien survivors limped back to their homeworld. The few who had seen the Resolute up close spoke in hushed, almost broken voices. They described the ship as a predator, not a machine, silent, precise, and merciless. Their leaders tried to dismiss it as an exaggeration. But even they couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. The galaxy had always believed in numbers. More ships, more guns, more fleets meant victory. But the humans had just shattered that belief. One ship had rewritten the rules of war. It's deep in the void, hidden beyond sensor range. Other human warships waited, their engines cold, their weapons ready. The message was clear. The Resolute was not alone.